Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle May, the founder of the Am I Hungry Mindful Eating Programs and Training and the author of the Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat book series. Recently, I asked you to share your two biggest challenges. We got hundreds of responses on our blog and on our public Facebook page and by email. I really want to thank you for sharing this. Even though you're in different places along your journey, I could really hear your heart. I know because I'd struggled with eating for many years myself as well. And I know how hard it is to talk about because it feels like you've been doing the same thing for so long and yet you continue to struggle with the same issues. Now, don't get me wrong, I was a very successful dieter. In fact, I did it over and over and over again. At the same time, I was a family physician with a busy medical practice, and in fact, many of my patients were wonderful and loyal and even followed me from my first practice to my second practice. What they didn't know is that I had this little secret. I was struggling with food, I was struggling with yo-yo dieting, and you know what? Many of them were too. Since I was initially successful with every diet that I tried, I began to think that there was something wrong with me. I didn't really blame the diets. After all, they did seem to work temporarily. I was also really interested in human behavior. I mean, you may not know this about me, but before I went to medical school, I got my undergraduate degree in psychology. And so I began to wonder, why do I keep struggling with these same issues? Why do I turn to food for so many reasons? And I wonder if you've wondered that same thing, because based on the comments that you shared, it seems like a lot of us are in the same patterns over and over and over again. Habitual eating, mindless eating, eating for emotional reasons, eating too much, eating because people brought food or left food, or because you don't have time to cook something healthy or just don't want something healthy, or even overeating healthy foods. I've done that too. There are two things I want you to know. You are not alone, and it doesn't have to be like this. You see, about 16, 17 years ago, I was so curious about why I kept doing the same thing over and over again. I was frustrated about it, of course, but I really began to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why do I do this? Then I noticed that my husband and my two young children didn't struggle with these issues at all. In fact, they loved food. My husband even became a professional chef later, but they just didn't eat when they weren't hungry very often. They ate whatever they wanted, they didn't think about food when they weren't eating, and they didn't have any trouble stopping as soon as they were satisfied. So I was leading a very different life. I was thinking about food all the time, even when I wasn't hungry. I was eating for reasons that had nothing to do with what my body really needed. And of course, I ate foods that I felt that I shouldn't because of all of my dieting. I wonder if you struggle with some of these issues too. Do you find yourself reaching for food even though you said you weren't going to? Do you find yourself overeating foods that maybe you feel guilty about later? Do you find yourself eating to the point that you feel stuffed and uncomfortable? It's no fun, is it? But it doesn't have to be like that. For me, once I realized that the real challenge for myself and many of the people that I was working with at that time is that it wasn't really about the food at all. It had a lot more to do with why we eat in the first place. I eventually developed a model that I call the mindful eating cycle. And I realized that my husband and my kids and all these other people seem to follow a pattern that I call the instinctive eating cycle. I'm going to post a graphic of it on my blog so you can take a look. Now, in the instinctive eating cycle, people primarily eat because they're hungry. They eat when they need fuel, basically. They eat whatever they love. They eat it with purpose and awareness because they want to feel good when they're done. So they'll stop and leave perfectly good food on their plate, right? And then they go out and they use their energy to live their life. They're not thinking about food all the time in between. When they get hungry again, they go back through the cycle again. Duh! Why couldn't I do this? It seems so effortless for them. So eventually I realized that I needed to get to the core issues and really understand what was driving my eating cycle. And I'm going to tell you more about that in the next video. But for now, what I want you to do is begin to put connections together for yourself. Why do you eat? When do you eat? And what do you eat? What I realized for me is that I craved chocolate and other sweets when I was overwhelmed or stressed out, when I was looking to escape whatever was going on. And I liked the crunchy, salty foods when I was looking for a little bit of pleasure or when I was bored or watching TV. Now, understanding why I craved certain foods was really helpful for me, because what I needed to do was to get beyond the food and understand what drove patterns of eating. Once I began to understand why I did what I did, I was able to change my whole pattern of eating. I began to eat when I was hungry, mostly. I still like a little chocolate or chips from time to time just for pure pleasure. I began to be able to eat whatever I loved without guilt and without overeating. I ate with the intention of feeling good when I was finished eating. And now I can stop even if there's perfectly good food on my plate, because I'm not worried about whether I'm going to get to have it later, or whether I've blown it, or whether I need to get rid of it so that I don't blow my diet tomorrow. And most importantly, I'm not spending all of my time and energy thinking about food anymore. I'm not feeling guilty. I'm not worried about food. I trust myself to eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full, and that food will be there when I need it, and no one's going to take it away from me anymore. I want that for you too. And you can have that. This is something that every single one of us was born instinctively to do effortlessly. And I'm going to show you how. So in the next video, what I'm going to do is share with you a script that is so helpful for helping you decode your emotional eating. What are your emotions telling you, and what can you do about it? In the meantime, what I need you to do is go over to my blog or to our public Facebook page and write a little bit about what you've noticed about why you eat, when you eat, and what you eat. This is important because we're going to use that work in this script that I'm going to share with you in the next video. Until then, be mindful.